All right, welcome back, everybody. Once again, my name is Aaron Kaplan, and I am the managing partner of Promise Partners. Two quick administrative pieces before I get into my shtick. One is in breakout session A, which was in this room over here. Somebody left a parking ticket. If you don't want to pay full tab, you want to just pay for the hours you were here, come see me afterwards. I'll be sitting down over here. And then number two, we've had some requests from folks that if you have garbage, please put them in the receptacles, because we're not getting some help from getting it cleaned up. So if we could all clean up our own messes, that'd be awesome. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to figure out how to get to the sponsors page, if you can help me in the back. Because I want to make sure that we thank our sponsors, these folks here at the bottom. They are the folks that really have made this event happen, and it's a total success, hearing tons of positive feedback. So thank you all and our partners, as well as don't forget to tag us on LinkedIn, social, however you play the game. So now let me tell you a little bit about me and my story. I received my undergraduate degree from Indiana University. I received my MBA here at Weatherhead. Early in my career, I worked for a few large Fortune 100 companies, and I then transitioned to smaller companies and found that even more enjoyable. But something was definitely missing. What I really wanted was to be able to control and impact my own destiny. And my first attempt was to do a startup. And that was energizing in one sense, but lonely in another. And in the end, it failed, like 90% of all other startups. And just as I was winding down that startup, some fine person, a friend of mine, brought me to a Promise Partners meeting. And in the end, I really found my people. As the only non-profit ETA accelerator in the US, Promise introduced me to many like-minded folks who wanted to acquire, were aspiring to acquire, or helping folks to acquire businesses. Promise's goal is to help entrepreneurs realize their dreams of business ownership, and this organization had been doing this for over 30 years. Promise Partners has proven this successfully over and over again. 68 members have purchased almost 100 businesses. Super impressive. This nonprofit organization draws upon various ETA strategies by collaborating with existing business owners to accelerate the path to ownership. And this is done through mentoring, personalized coaching, deep acquisition experience. And it's all about how do we surround each other and really have a community. The bottom line is that the members of Promise helped me understand that there was another path to ownership, and it wasn't just through a startup. By buying an existing business and growing it, it allowed me to bypass the problems and loneliness of a startup. In addition to realizing that the organization principles aligned with my values in mentoring and giving back, that was another key piece for me. All of the acquisitions that are out there and all of us who are in this community, we need support. There's ups and downs to the entire process. And having a community that we can share the good and the bad, that is a key element, at least for me, and I think for many of you. One of the exciting things about Cleveland is that we are the epicenter of the ETA movement. Yes, there are acquisitions happening throughout the country, no doubt. But the 30 years of experience that we have in this organization, and it was all started by Professor Richard Osborne here at Weatherhead, that started Promise Partners along the road of how do we help each other. This is the community that has gotten me, and I think can help many of you, get to the promised land. Sorry, I had to throw that in. Other communities are writing and blogging about the ETA movement, but the rubber hits the road here. We are doing it. We are buying businesses, we are talking about buying businesses, and we are going through it in actuality, and not just writing it. So that, I view, as super exciting and super powerful. That's my story. That's what I wanted to come tell you. Now, I'm going to shift gears, and I think I'm passing the mic to Jeff, and you are going to take us into the afternoon. Entree. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Is my mic working? Yeah, there we go. How many of you, just a quick show of hands, were here? Actually, we'll do it the different way because I know the result's not going to work that way. How many are just joining us for the afternoon? Weren't here this morning? Couple folks. All right. Really quickly then, I won't go into a lot of detail. My name is Jeff Bowman, co-founder and CEO of the Ames Institute right here in Cleveland. We've been partnering with ETA companies, supporting them, helping them accelerate their journey over the last almost 10 years. This really isn't about me though. So let's talk about what you can expect and get you up to date on where we're at in today's agenda before I introduce our next speaker. So this morning when we came together, we talked about some meaningful stories, right? Some meaningful stories of ETA in this community. The big theme that emerged from that I noticed from each of the shares that we had is really at the core of this. It's about people. It's about us. It's about the opportunity to create jobs, to create opportunities for more people in this amazing community. After we had those stories shared, we went into some different workshops, lots of workshops in each of the 3 bays here, where a ton of wealth and knowledge and strategies were shared with all of you. Now, as we come into the afternoon, we're going to shift our focus a little bit. We're going to quickly go into a panel that I'm super excited about, someone that always runs these really well, about becoming a credible buyer. And I know there's quite a few folks in here at that point of their journey. After we unpack that, we're going to go into some conversations with one another, have an opportunity to unpack what we've learned. And then after we break, we're going to see an amazing pitch competition, which is really a first-hand opportunity for you to see the types of businesses ETA owners have the opportunity to buy in this community. After we have the pitch competition, we'll do a little bit of crowdsourcing about how do we accelerate your dreams of ETA, or how do we accelerate what's happening in terms of ETA in this community before we wrap up. So I'm super excited to get to introduce to you to someone who's a key part of making this happen. I want to introduce Andrew Medvedev. Andrew has served in his role of I'm looking around the room, I saw him before, I'm not sure where he went to. Andrew has served in his role as Dean of the Weatherhead School of Management since September of 2022. He has a long history with the school and Case Western Reserve University, having earned his bachelor's degree here, and then later joining as a board of trustee in 2018. He joined Weatherhead's visiting committee, where he helped launch the school's alumni-led career boot camp program, designed to further bolster the students' marketplace readiness. Prior to his role as dean, Andrew was a managing director and portfolio manager for Morgan Stanley Investment Management. His career there spanned over almost 2 decades in investment management, corporate finance, investment banking, and a significant focus on traditional and renewable energy sectors, a sector that I have some experience with as well. On a personal note, he immigrated with his family to Cleveland as a teenager. As I mentioned before, earned his undergraduate in economics from Case Western in 1997. He earned his MBA from Harvard in 2004, lives in Shaker Heights with his wife, Christine, who runs a sustainably focused architectural design studio, and together they have 3 children. Please help me in giving a warm welcome to Andrew. You're right in front of me.
Thanks so much, Jeff. I appreciate the kind intro. And it's great to see so many folks here. It is an exciting time to be at Weatherhead and at Case Western Reserve. We are in the middle of probably one of the most transformational times in higher ed, and I couldn't be more thrilled to be offered the opportunity to lead this incredible institution. We've been quite busy since we've seen so many of you guys last year. The school has been hard at work in engaging alumni all across the country in a variety of ways, and we've launched alumni chapters in New York and California, and we've engaged our veterans community. We've brought alumni into the life of the school and rebooting so much alumni connectivity in our degree programs via advisory boards. The faculty has been busy working hard at engaging really interesting and difficult problems like supply chain resiliency, leading in the age of AI, thinking through digitization of legacy enterprises like our own Rust Belt environment here. And the programs that we lead have been going through redesign, update, and in some cases, brand new launch like our new MBA in product management. We do all this for one reason and one reason only. The future belongs to the problem-solving university, and we will do that. We'll let our peers on coasts get distracted by politics and other things while we build the future and solve the problems that matter in the real world. And what we do here in the ETA community is a perfect example of that. To me, the school's capabilities are around leadership, transformation, management, actualization, and that's what the ETA community needs. And the ability to produce a generation of talent that'll be empowered to write their own story right here in the Great Lakes area is something that was just too hard to pass up. So I'm proud to say that the ETA idea has become an ETA class, has become an ETA program, has become an ETA community here at Weatherhead. From now 60 or is it 70 Simon students that are part of the ETA club, who on a beautiful Cleveland summer fall night were busy in a windowless conference room working on pitch competitions rather than hitting the bars, which is a true testament of how attractive something is to the young people, to a 3-course sequence, to a large group of alumni that have come out of the woodwork and have become mentors and peers and partners, to success stories that are building on that tradition of 45 plus now alumni that have gone through the journey. We are really forging that community. And to me, that is ultimately the power of a university and how we will fulfill that promise of problem solving. You can watch a video on YouTube about how to do discounted cash flow. I mean, ultimately, that's not the differentiating factor. What is the ability to empower, to provide these students a lab at life, to give them reps that allow them to be real world ready, to then plug them into a community that takes that readiness and magnifies that impact. And so all of you being here is part of that promise and part of that community that's going to not only enable their success, but build that generation of entrepreneurs here in our community. So I'm thrilled that the school gets to be the intellectual hub of this movement. I personally think that the future belongs to that entrepreneur who will apply the skill sets that have historically largely reside in corporate settings, but put them into a far more growthy individual environment on their terms. And I want to make sure that this school sustains its leadership and grows that leadership in the field. So I hope that all of you can call on Weatherhead as your third home away from home. I hope that all of you join me in this journey of building this incredible community such that not that many years from now, there's a beautiful cover on Business Week that says, "What the hell's in the water in Cleveland?" Where they start talking about not only what's here, and then they realize it's been here all along, but is now being taken to great heights. So I'm thrilled that you're here. I so appreciate your partnership, and welcome to Case Western.
Thank you, Andrew. For anybody who was in the workshop that I was running, you heard me talk about the fact that I'm a recovering CPA. And so I started to get really excited when Andrew was talking about differentiated cash flows, and then I just calmed myself down. I really love what Andrew shared, right? And I can tell you in other communities, this kind of thing is not happening. People talk about it, but rarely is there action at this level. Up next, we're going to have a panel, and people are going to talk about some of their stories. And I can't think of a better person to facilitate this panel. For those of you who have been here the last couple of years, you've seen him moderate these panels in a masterful way. So I'm pleased to introduce to you Simon Peck. Simon is an associate professor of strategy at the Weatherhead School, a board member of Promise Partners, what you heard Aaron sharing about passionately earlier, and he's really helping to lead the ETA initiative at Weatherhead. Simon has done a masterful job, and I know he will again today. You're in for a real treat. Simon, come on up. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. That picture's about 20 years old, and looks like I'm wearing the same clothes, doesn't it? I mean, I do own other things. Look, let me bring the panel up here. Could I get the folks in the panel? Denise, Larry, Kylie, and Sean. Kylie, I was looking for you. We hadn't met, but yeah, sorry. No, likewise. Look, I'm delighted. Let me just. Here we go. The folks are on the screen. Apparently, you can just turn the mic on and leave it on. Okay. All right. So let me just introduce our friends here. Larry Fulton, the founder of Fulton Equity, ETA entrepreneur, an alum of the Weatherhead School of Business Management, and a Promise Partners member. There was a thing in Richard Osborne's classes. You never used your own name. You always you were given a maid, or you had to choose your own maid name. Scott Lowry I think he was called Big Daddy. I'm not sure what was going on there. I was the saint for obvious reasons. Larry, what was your name?
My name was affectionately called Big Al.
Big guys. All these big guys. All right. Denise, full-time searcher, experienced executive in finance, a Weatherhead alumna again, important member of Promise Partners, and currently searching full-time. And she's doing that through this organization she's founded called Cormedo Partners. Denise, your name?
My name was Sunshine.
Sunshine. All right, very good. Obviously, Kylie Smith is. Did you do a Richard's class?
I don't know. I must not have really been there. I don't know.
Okay, all right.
I did. I had him twice.
But you've forgotten your name.
I forgot my name.
All right.
It's like Smiley Kylie or something.
Smiley Kylie. All right, that works. Smiley Kylie. When she's not smiling, she's SVP and team leader at CF Bank. As I say, an alum. And we're very grateful to CF for a 3-year sponsor of this event. And then finally, Sean Ward is the founder and CEO of Midtown Capital Advisors, specializing in sell-side advisory services, business consulting, and debt restructuring. Sean isn't an alumna or an alum of the Weatherhead School. I was hoping he was going to say he was of like Ohio State or something, but he's one of our sister colleges in the area, John Carroll. So look, welcome everyone. Here are the five things that I think we teach at Weatherhead, and we sort of live through Promise Partners when it comes to being a credible buyer. Firstly, have a clear acquisition criteria that fits what we call your entrepreneurial superpowers. So you've got to know what your superpower is. Have an effective search plan to generate a lot of quality opportunities that you're going to look at. Have the funding sorted out, have cash, investors, have a plan to secure debt or to bring the seller on. Have experience of getting the deal done, experience from letter of intent through to close. And then, a proven track record in seeking or in running the sort of business that you're seeking to acquire. So that's our highlights. I think what we're going to do with the panel here today is sort of flesh that out a bit more and sort of learn sort of some specifics and some stories around that. What I'm planning to do is I'm going to take up half the time, and then questions from the crowd as well. So that's how we're going to play this. So let me start off though. Kylie as a banker, Sean as a broker. Let's just think about what are some of the things you look for when you're approached by buyers. What are some of the first questions that you're asking? smiling.
Really hard because so many people up here have done it. I really think I go right to the jugular vein and do you understand cash flow? And Larry failed this question. I asked him earlier, but I think really that is the kind of the screening for me. And then I go and I build from there. Either I'm going to help and coach, or I'm going to be able to. We'll get a deal and we'll get it closed in the next immediate 6 months. So that's kind of. It's intense.
Right.
Yes.
I can attest to that. I can attest to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sean, what, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
you're a broker, so that's in the role of more of a broker, yeah.
yeah, I'm a broker, and I mean, I've shown deals to a lot of faces in this room, people on the panel, and constantly looking at kind of the soft skills, right? I think dollars and cents are important, obviously, but I'm a matchmaker, right? I am trying to find that common inner ground where a buyer and a seller, if I could put them together in a room, they can go out to dinner and create a friendship over time. It doesn't have to be this two-sided deal where the transaction, one person loses, the other person wins. A quality buyer has spent some time looking in before looking out. So I want to be able to see that, and I'll ask questions about it, right? Who's their team? What do they know? What don't they know? Are they willing to be educated? Are they part of Promise Partners, right? That's huge. It's a huge thing for me. And the items can go on and on.
Apart from understanding cash, Kylie, what makes someone particularly credible in your eyes? I mean, are there some things that you think, oh yeah, look, this is someone I want to go to bat for?
Yes. So I came up with this passionate, which is kind of what I got about Osborne's class. Do you really, really want it? I feel like he might have just given me my own exercise, because I don't even remember my name, where you had to put 100 reasons why you wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so I know half the crowd heard this already. So, and then I did structured. Have you really thought through this? And do you have a professional plan to get to where you want to be? And then prepared. Are you prepared? Have you done ETA? Have you gotten your MBA? Do you go through all the different programs? And the biggest part prepared is what I start usually with is cash flow. So that's kind of PSP is my motto. An entrepreneur said, what really gets you there? And that's what really gets me there, to be able to help people out.
Larry, you do this sort of stuff. You did it yourself. You were self-funded in your first sort of ETA opportunity, but now you're doing more mentoring. I mean, what do you see? What do you see in people who are doing it for the first time? What can they do to build credibility in the eyes of people like you?
Yeah, it's a loaded question because there's so many aspects, right? But I would break it down pretty much in 3 categories. One would be kind of putting my old banker hat on. There's something called the 5 C's of credit, right? And then also going back to what you mentioned earlier, having a deal thesis, and I'll break down each one of these. And then I'd say experience, okay? The 5 C's of credit, 5 words, start with the letter C. First one is credit, just like it sounds. Are you able to obtain credit? For those of you in the room who might have a credit score, for an example, in the 600s, right? You have to understand that that's going to impact your cost of capital, that might impact your structure, your terms, et cetera. So you want to move that credit up to the 700, mid 700 if you can, or higher, right? Because you're going to be looked upon as a borrower. Cash, again, just like it sounds. There are many people on social who will talk about the opportunity for you to buy a company with no money down, right? That could possibly happen, but more than likely, you're going to have some equity contribution. And that equity contribution starts at a minimum 10%. Typically, you'll see 15, 20, 25, 30% equity contributions in a deal. And so from a cash perspective, do the things now, if you're searching, that's going to allow you to accumulate cash. Look at your personal financial statement. Look at your assets minus your liabilities, trying to build your net worth, because that's going to help you become a more credible buyer. And that starts with the letter C in terms of collateral, right? So banks are going to lend off businesses' assets, but they're also going to look at your personal guarantee as a form of collateralization as well. And then you have market conditions, and then your character. Market conditions, if you think economics or think geopolitical types of problems that can develop globally or even regionally that could possibly impact your business. And then just real quickly, if you look at experience, I know me personally, I really want to work with a potential operator who has direct industry experience. Have you run a business? Have you negotiated with your customer? Have you fought against supplier pricing increases? Have you impacted the cash flow of your business? Have you looked at maintenance CapEx or growth CapEx? Have you developed a policy in terms of your human resources? Have you fired someone or hired someone, right? So we talked a little bit about that in the first section this morning. So that's experience. Finance experience. Are you someone who runs towards numbers or runs away from numbers, right? So I would say that's extraordinarily important. And then last, in terms of a deal thesis, that's really your mission statement that is written. We call it an acquisition thesis, right? I think of an acronym I came up with, which is YTSP. So Y is the why. Why do you want to do entrepreneurship, right? YTSP. What makes you, the individual, to run this particular company, right? What makes you special? What's your passion? And then the T is the type. The type of industry, the type of business. Are you looking at a SaaS business as opposed to a machine shop? Completely different markets, completely different industries, et cetera. The S is the size. The size of the business in terms of a revenue, or the size of the number of employees that you feel comfortable leading and managing, right? And then last, the P, as in profitability. It could be profitability metrics. I use EBITDA after CapEx to give me a pure EBITDA number. So hopefully that answers.
Yeah, it does. So on the investment side of it, how can people get credibility with you? What's an effective way to build a relationship with you as an investor? What have you seen works? What have you seen hasn't worked?
So I was so fortunate enough to sell Lefco Worthington last year, and that really changed the trajectory of my family. And so we're looking at investment opportunities from an investor standpoint. So I'm constantly looking for searchers that I can partner with, but I'm also looking for add-on acquisitions for my portfolio as well. If you're an investor, or I'm sorry, not an investor, but a searcher, and you're out in the marketplace looking for business opportunities to buy, I'm on LinkedIn. Just give me a call. But essentially what I look at from a characteristic standpoint, that's the primary driver, is do you have the grit, the grind, the passion? Are you a winner? Are you someone that has fortitude? Have you done it before? Have you managed people? I think those characteristics coupled with experience is extremely important, and that really drives a strong interest for me to want to work with you. But lastly, I'd say I'm also looking for your ability to contribute, and that could be financially into the transaction, because there needs to be some reasonable approach around the equity contribution or the capital stack of a transaction.
Interesting. Denise, so you're at this phase now. You're at this phase where, about acquiring and, accumulating credibility that's going to help you make this purchase. What are some of the tactics? What are some things that you've done? What are maybe some of the things that you've done that you thought, oh, I didn't know I had to do that?
Sure. Well, when I first started the search, there were 4 things that I identified that I needed to tackle right away. And the first one was to establish my investment criteria, my acquisition criteria. And I actually started that process before leaving my W-2 job. And around that same time, I got invited to attend a Gold Flight meeting. And in the Promise organization, flights are subgroups within the greater organization, and the members of each flight essentially act as each other's personal board of directors or accountability buddies. And each flight is also led by a team of experienced mentors that are successful ETA entrepreneurs. So I get invited to go to this gold flight, which consists of everyone who's a part of that gold flight are people who are actively searching and seeking for a business. And so I'm excited to attend. I believe I go into it thinking I'm the invited guest and I'm going to be there to learn and to listen. And immediately found out that that's not how it was going to go. At the very top of the meeting, the leader said, Denise is joining us today, and she's going to walk us through her investment criteria and put up her one-pager. And so immediately I was in the hot seat. And the feedback came fast and furious. In fact, I think there's some people in this room that were at that meeting. I was struggling just to capture everything that was coming at me. But the other thing that I realized is pretty early on is that these people were really vested in my success. And they wanted to make sure that I understood the challenges that I was going to face when I walked away from my W-2 job, and what, how both intermediaries and buyers or sellers were going to look at my investment criteria and what they were going to challenge me on. So that was the first thing. The second thing is that I needed to hone my personal story, because my advisors were concerned that I had come from this big corporate environment, and that's what it was going to appear like on the outside. But the reality is that yes, I worked for a big company, but I was in a role at that company where I was re-envisioning companies that were struggling, as well as doing startups for that organization that were very successful. I mean, I was building high-performing, very engaged teams that were making that happen. And so I needed to hone that story to make sure that it would resonate first with the intermediaries, so they would open the gate to the sellers, but also so that the sellers would understand that they could trust me and that I would do well with their legacy. So I had the opportunity right after I left my job to participate in a pitch contest. And the interesting thing about this pitch contest, it was sponsored by Scott Shane and Comeback Capital, and there were going to be over 300 investors in the audience from both coasts and the Midwest, as well as a panel of judges, and we were to pitch why these investors should be investing in us as individuals, people that were going to look for a company but didn't actually have a business yet to present. And as part of that process, there were a couple of things that were wonderful about it. First off, the people that I was pitching with, we actually became each other's collaborators. Rather than competitors, in the weeks leading up, we worked with each other to provide feedback and to help each other to hone the story. The other thing is we were surrounded by a group of mentors, mostly from Promise, who spent countless hours working with us as a group and also individuals to help hone this story. I mean, my objective in participating in this was to be able, I figure if I could pitch my story and build credibility with 300 investors, I should be able to get through and make that story resonate with an intermediary or a seller. And then the third thing I needed to do is I needed partners. And we could have a whole session on just partners and everything about that. But specifically as it pertains to being credible, I needed people on my team that could fill the gaps that I didn't have. So, and specifically, I needed partners who were experienced in this space and had closed transactions before, so that when I was presenting and looking for opportunities, I could explain that our team has deep experience in acquiring and closing businesses, and also the type of experience that enables us to be flexible, to come up with solutions that meet all the parties that are involved. So that partnership was the third thing that was really important to credibility. And then the last thing is more logistics. I established Cormito Partners because I think it's really critical that you come to the market. You're competing against PE firms and investment banks, all these professionals that are out in the market, and you've got to come across as equal professionals to them. So we set up the company, Cormito Partners, as well as a website that's professionally managed, and I built a tech stack. I built a tech stack, one, to help me to manage the search appropriately, but also to present professionally forward.
That's interesting. Can I just get you to say, we said at the front that you got to have an investment criteria, and Scott, GJ, Reed, and the classes Promise are helping you do that. But how did you come to think about what your own particular strengths were? So the criteria is one thing, but how did you get to that point of thinking, here are my particular entrepreneurial strengths that may or may not fit with what I was doing at Key, for instance? But I mean, can you say a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, it started with my own experience. One of the things that I did when I was at Key is I started a payments business that delivered solutions to technology companies. And we grew that business to 53 million in 6 years. And so I had a lot of experience working with SaaS companies and helping them to find solutions to embed payments into their offerings. And so it started with that. One of the areas that we're looking pretty heavy in is tech-enabled companies, SaaS companies. A lot of it involved business servicing. So that's also part of the criteria as well.
Yeah, interesting. Sean, Denise makes a good point about, competition for deals out there, particularly from strategics or private equity that can probably pay, a premium, a significant premium. So how does an ETA entrepreneur, compete in that sort of world when you're doing the matching, for instance?
That's a great question, and I just want to compliment Denise and Larry because they're easy to sell. Got their website. I can show the owners who they are. It helps a lot, right? And that's kind of the softer things. The business owners, they care about the money. They care about their employees. They care about the legacy. And, having professional searchers that others can model off of, going to make it a lot easier for everybody. One of the things that I like to see that separates a buyer or professional searcher is, kind of like in sports, you got to learn how to lose, learn how to say no, learn how to back out, learn how to stop wasting time. And you become more effective in your search, and you'll show better to the owners because deals don't die. They just change, they resurrect. Time does sometimes heal it. I think you get a lot of business owners who are interested in selling and they want to go down the process to see what it feels like because they've never done it before. Therefore, they don't know the game, so they need to go through it. And when you have someone that's easy to bring to the table that has a clear search criteria, I'm going to call them before the deal hits the market, right? I have an idea of what Denise is looking for and what Larry's looking for. I might call them first in my strategic process, and then I'm going to call Kylie to make sure they can get financed. But that's really helpful when you're looking at buyers and analyzing buyers.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Can you say some more about being able to walk away from a deal with but not erode that credibility with people like you and Kylie, for instance?
I guess make my job a little bit easier to get feedback, right? The owners need the feedback, and it helps when it comes from, the group that just looked at the company and they're not interested. So a follow-up email, Sean, business owners, thanks for your time. This is not right for me because of this, right? And just be blunt, right? Don't sugarcoat it. I think for me that shows that you care about the time that we spent as intermediaries and that business owners spent showing you their business, exposing their financial statements, the risk around that, right? Alone, that a tax return falls on the street in the wrong hands is huge. And you got to be able to mitigate that risk. But for me, I want to call back these buyers again. I want to find everyone in this room a business to buy. So if you leave it the right way, I'll probably call you back. And if you leave it the wrong way, I probably won't call you back.
All right. What percentage of people screw it up?
More than half.
Yeah, please.
Something. Promise Partner has so much influx of phenomenal new members, and so right in the beginning, we talk a little bit about what size do you want, where do you want to go, what are your needs. And so sometimes the expectations are I should have a really tiny, tiny company because that feels safe, right? Or that's really what I think can handle. And then you go through a few more questions like, so how much do you need to make? Or where do you want to go? Or where do you want to be at the end when you 5 years you sell it, or 10 or 15, and they don't match up. So then the question is in their mind is, where am I going to get the money from? So currently, kind of twice a month, I close new business loans, and I am seeing more and more creative ways for buyers to get money in this space than I ever have in my whole entire life. And it's exciting. Family offices are putting money in. They're giving line of credits. Individuals just give their own little, and it's so much more reasonable than mezz, right? So the seller notes are doing funky things. And so there is a way to get to where you need, but it goes back to, I think Denise said it, be prepared. Be structured. You have the right team to coach you on what is at your, what you can do. So you can call me, you can call Scott, you can call the world, but you can find out kind of what can I do to get to that larger deal? Because typically everybody that's leaving their executive job or their job out of MBA, they want more than a certain thing. So I thought that was an excellent question you asked.
So what is here's a not so excellent one. What's the funkiest thing you've seen then? That was your word. I mean,
funky, like type of lending?
Yeah.
Well, he was actually going to share it, but he didn't because we got a little consumed with other directions. But John Coco has a story where he acquired something, and it was patent heavy. So the actual net income EBITDA is down here, but the price is up here. So he had to come to the bank and explain, look, you're going to get all this debt and you're going to give it to me, but really the performance isn't there. But we're going to be okay because we have these future sales. So that was really kind of funky, but he walked us through it. He made us comfortable. He was prepared. He did all your credit things I should know by heart. You're very good at this. I'm hiring you. But that was a funky banking thing. The other thing I'm seeing is family offices are getting into niche businesses that I think the exposure helps them with the businesses they have bought. Right. So that is cool too. So lots of neat things going on.
Yeah.
And I think, Kylie, you touched on something that's really important too. There's the partners that you do your deal with, right? And that's critical. But there's also all the partners that support the transaction as well. And I don't think you can wait until you actually have a deal to foster those relationships. Kylie, actually, I didn't know you before I started my search, but I met her on day 2 after I left, literally, and I reached out and said, I'm launched this search. I'd like to talk to you because I want to understand what you're going to need from me when I have a deal. And Kylie responded back and said, okay, I'll meet with you Tuesday at noon. It's a working lunch, bring your laptop. And it was, I don't think I touched my sandwich, but I had an hour and a half drilling where we kind of went through.
Happy stuff.
It was, well, it ended that way. But it was pretty intense. But I think it really fostered credibility from the standpoint of what I'm going to need to do in order to bring a deal to you, or quite frankly, anyone in this space. But you've got to do that with, I think, all of your partners.
Yes.
Your accountants, your attorneys, everyone you're going to need to do this deal.
So there's a number of paths for doing this. I mean, we speak a bit more about the team approach, the sort of to sponsoring a search. But Larry, your first go round was entirely self-funded. I mean, so you didn't engage in any of that stuff. So how did you present yourself when you're entirely self-funded and not have the team and all the financial backing behind you?
Well, my team consisted of a lawyer, my wife who's also a lawyer, and my accountant and myself. And so we did all the diligence around the deal, and that's really the team that I brought to the table. But I kind of look at it, well, in terms of my background, I brought education experience, I brought actual operating experience, and professionally, I spent 14 years in corporate America. So my first gig was working for KeyBank. I worked for their LBO department called Structured Finance, highly leveraged transactions, middle market size. And then I moved on to the SBA, the Small Business Administration, principally because I didn't see myself buying middle market size businesses at that point, right? I see myself doing that now, but not back then. So at the SBA, I was one of the 3 underwriters. And so we saw hundreds of transactions from around really the upper part of the state of Ohio. And that was before the SBA centralized its underwriting processes down in Tennessee. So I'd see anything from startups to manufacturing, distribution businesses, et cetera. And my job was to underwrite those deals, to look at the credit and make a decision, a go, no-go decision on those types of businesses. And so I did that for a few years. After I got my MBA, I became a controller because that put me closer to the P&L. And then I became a finance manager because I actually wanted to impact the P&L. And then 18 months later, I became a general manager. And so that kind of led me to the process of actually running a business and being responsible for both the balance sheet and the P&L of a growing division. And I turned around the operation, grew it, and then tried to buy it from my employer, but they weren't having it. So, but that story, for me, got me to the point where not only do I have banking, finance, M&A, operations, and credit and underwriting experience, it was very deliberate. You know, it met my mission of buying a business, but it got me to the point of feeling confident. So when I go out and I can talk to a banker about a deal, I knew exactly what that banker wanted. If I'm talking to a buyer or a seller, then I knew exactly what that seller wants. You know, and most of the times it's not necessarily a transaction. I think, like Sean mentioned, it's not really a transaction. It is, but it is an emotional experience. And I think as a buyer, you have to understand that and position yourself and tailor your conversations accordingly. Because that person, you know, she could have been running that business multi-generationally, right? And so there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of passion. Maybe they couldn't pass it on to the next generation, right? Maybe the next generation didn't want it. Maybe, you know, they're struggling financially and they need a way out. And so I think you have to be very cognizant of the situation that's at stake and not necessarily treat it like a financial transaction. You can do that behind closed doors when you're doing all your analytics or what have you, your diligence. But in my opinion anyway, I think what has helped me do transactions is I learn how to tailor my conversations around the expectations of not just the financial partners that I've associated myself with, but also the various sellers.
Yeah, interesting. Sean, you said you would love to work with Denise, for instance. And one of the things we promised, we actually sort of make a point about saying, you know, the buyer has to have a relationship with the seller. It means that all sorts of good things can happen. Then, you know, you may not even have to have the highest cash offer on the table. But you're going to have more connections with the seller than Denise is. We haven't role-played this, but I mean, what might be some of the things that the buyer gets on the phone to you about that, you know, what are the, say, top 3 things that, well, I like Denise, but I'm worried about X, Y, Z. What might that be? I mean,
ability to get financed is a big one, right? So I too learned the 5 C's of credit back when I was a credit officer, and you know, I'm kind of going through that mentality with the buyer, you know, looking at their ability to obtain financing, right? Now, if we do our jobs correctly, the business itself should be bankable, right? So it's like more of the cash down payment, the credit score, the experience that are needed. You know, other areas that you know, we're kind of prodding on, you know, the buyer. Again, what's their team, right? In Cleveland, Northeast Ohio, everyone kind of knows each other. One of my former clients says it's the worst town to have an affair in because everyone knows each other, right? And so who's your lawyer? Who's your banker? Who's your accountant? Are they deal people? Are they in this room today, right? Are they invested in the community? You know, I've had deals where we're going through LOI and we get a due diligence request and it's like 12 pages long, comes from some big, you know, downtown law firm. They clearly didn't spend the time to look at the LOI. If you're sending something to a buyer or to a seller and you're requesting information, look at it, okay? Don't request information that's applicable to a publicly traded company. Don't inundate with 12 pages. Maybe start with like 4 or 5, and knowing that you'll start digging in and have to have a request. You'll request more documents. Talk to your banker, right? They will hone you in on what exactly you need to get the banking piece right. Don't forget about the bank statements, right? Don't forget about the treasury management piece, the ability to like manage your cash flow in and out of the business, right? So looking at the buyer, understanding what their knowledge of that process is really important. I can add some more if you want.
Any other mistakes that you see, Carly, that people make that could be avoided?
I think sometimes is don't waste the time of the seller because they really sniff test are you legit or not. So when you come to the table, make sure you have, Larry gets very prepared, Denise gets very prepared, but show that to the seller in the questions you ask, the interaction you ask, and just kind of tease out the structure. I think it makes that seller feel more comfortable. And I don't know where Sean plays in the middle of the buyer-seller. Sometimes in my mind, nothing against you, but I like the seller and the buyer to talk together because they really know each other. And then we know if it's right or not. Sometimes that's not good because all the things, I have no idea why or why not. But that's the thing, is really, really getting everything together. So in Promise, you're great. You have so many experts around everybody to get these spreadsheets going and understand things. Other people need to get valuation help. So if either it is Meet and More that's sponsored, or I use Ray Lampner a lot, that's at Sickish, but they really need to just give them a call, say, is this multiple right? Am I wasting the time? Should it be more? Should it be less? Because when you go to that seller, you need to respect them and know that you know what you're doing. Lots of people don't know what they're doing, and then they just kind of, it turns it off and it doesn't work as well, which you experience all the time, I'm sure. So, yeah.
Yeah, I say just study and learn sellers' discretionary earnings versus EBITDA. It will set you apart.
There we go. And you've been down the road with a few,
Oh, yeah.
looking at, and any takeaways so far on that front? I mean,
kind of in the middle right now.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm in the middle right now. But I totally, sometimes my experience has been when I can talk directly and build that relationship with the seller, those experiences tend to be the best. And that's not always possible. Sometimes the gatekeepers are pretty strong in the middle there. But I think it's a critical element to doing a successful transaction.
the gatekeepers like Sean.
Well, not Sean particularly, but there's some in the space
Right.
who like the control.
What do you think about that, Larry?
I was just going to say that a few things that I have seen that could possibly create a challenge is having a reasonable approach towards the capital stack. From a buyer's standpoint, if you're in a position where you have tons of expertise, tons of experience, you have saved some capital, you have a personal financial statement that's worthy of a PG or a personal guarantee that you could contribute in terms of equity ownership. And you don't necessarily have to contribute 10 to 20 to 30% yourself as a potential buyer. You can get some add-on investors to help with that cap stack, right? But to have a reasonable approach towards, if you don't have any of those attributes, those assets, right? You may not want to expect to own 80, 90% of the business, right? So having that reasonable approach. And then lastly, I'd say risk profile from a buyer's standpoint again. And because you can start this whole process of ETA, get a company acquired, go down the LOI prospect, and then obviously as you're talking to a banker, the reality sets in that, hey, I'm going to take a debt burden on of millions of dollars, right? And if this goes wrong, this is going to change the trajectory of my family forever, right? And so being able to be in a position to understand the risk profile and that your partner, your significant other, will support you through that. I am so blessed to have a wife that from day one, she got behind the mission statement, right? I'm going to buy a business, and here's all the things that could potentially go wrong, right? And she supported me through that. And I remember, just really quickly, Simon, I remember one time, and this was before Lefco Worthington became Lefco Worthington, I was questioning whether or not I was going to be able to make payroll to keep the lights on, right? And I needed to come up with equity because one of my customers didn't pay me like they were supposed to pay. We were talking about revenue quality earlier today. But just having the right team, having the right spouse, the right support group, and understanding the risk profile of what you're taking on. Because if it goes south, it could be a considerable situation for you to have to unwind and understand.
Last question from me before I ask folks in the crowd can grill the panel. But I mean, you've spoken a little bit about doing this with the ecosystem. You've mentioned some stuff. Talk a bit about what do we mean by smart money investors. I mean, it's not just dollars. It's what's smart money, and how does that help you?
Certainly. I mean, from a partner standpoint, it isn't just about the capital. And, and I have the ability to bring some capital into this myself as well, plus my partners. But I was looking for people who would be advisors as well. I mean, I really carefully selected our team, and unfortunately they said yes. But we're in this together, and they have experience that I don't have yet in this area, and they help. I learn a lot from them. So I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, that's a big thing in Promise as well. There's sort of this pay it forward mentality. I mean, as you say, everyone knows everyone, Sean, but everyone wants people to succeed, I think, and so.
Yeah, that's embedded in the DNA of the organization,
Yeah.
and not just everyone is expected to pay it forward no matter where they're at in the process.
Right.
So I try to help as many people as I can with what I've learned so far, as well as I'm the recipient, obviously, of a lot of it.
One of the things that Denise has done, you can send a deal. Hey, Denise, this might be of interest to you. And one of the things she says, it's not interest to me, but I know somebody who might be, right? It's that pay it forward mentality. If you know of someone who's looking for a deal that's not right for you, pass it along. Ask the intermediary, can I send it to somebody else? Right? It goes a long way.
Very cool. All right. Any questions from the crowd? Anyone looking to acquire some credibility here? Anyone want to? What other things do we need to do? What other? Or if you're a seller.
May I just say one thing?
Of course.
Yeah, just one. No, it might be a few, but Larry and Sean were very good at going to the depths of credit. I am labeled an entrepreneurial, banker. So the reason I'm saying this is because I say cash flow, and then I remembered somebody said, so what does that mean? And so it's simple. You have your net income, and then you add, you get your EBITDA, which is your cash. You have to take out anything you would pay for taxes on that net income, which is about 30%. And then you divide it by all your principal and interest payments. So that gives you a ratio. It's called debt service coverage, and that's like the master ratio of all banks. And so you need to be, just to be healthy and survive and do well, and cash is king, at a 1.5. So if you know that 1.5, you figure out how much you can actually get in debt, because banks don't like leverage over a 3. I could say 3.5, but my president of the bank's over there. Maybe 4 with an SBA, but you shouldn't have one of those. Come on now. So, and then the other two things that we just had an unfortunate, there are industries banks don't like, okay? I do have them, and I had a hard conversation. I love the guy, but we can't do it. So that industry we can't do. But industries, you have to find out what they like or not like, and then you need to always have your sales going hockey stick up to the right. So we're gonna have a full conversation with Brad, who might be on his texting or sleeping over there. He loves to talk about hockey stick up to the right. And then concentration. Somebody did come to me, and then they came up and reminded me, they just said it to me, 65% concentration, that seller has to stay on with equity and have a seller note. No bank is going to do anything except maybe a line of credit. So those are the 3 things: cash flow, concentration, and what was the other one? Come on, guys. Yeah, customer concentrations. They're killer. So 20% under, 10% under, really great, healthy, but 20% out of there. So when you do your gut checks, a quick check of what's going on, when I want to take 5 minutes because I see a deal or two a day, that's what I'll do. I'll just do a quick skim, done. And then the underwriter in the bank goes to all these C's. But I don't even know if our bank does it anymore, so it should. But yes, so I'm so sorry, but I just said cash flow, and it's kind of a stupid word if you don't know what I was thinking in my head. So that's cash flow. So thanks. Sorry.
One quick comment. If you find a company that does have that concentration, over 25% of sales coming from one company, you can get accounts receivable insurance, right? That's something that a bank could help. Don't you think? No. She says no. Doesn't help?
We handle it by putting more equity in to lower the risk. So we actually do the performance off the company, excluding that customer. So you take all that income from that customer out, you see if you can work it without it, and we do have a lot of people that do that. So, and I'm seeing equity in around 20% personally, 15, 20, and then I'm seeing another 10 to 20 from sellers. Because your space is really small here, it's high risk, so the sellers, I've not seen many that don't put money in unless, like, Brendan doesn't want the seller in Scaleco. He doesn't take a seller note. So that's where you might not see it. But yeah, so.
All right. So, you had a question, young man?
Yeah, my question is, when it comes to asking for diligence information, is there a baseline that isn't too overbearing? I know you kind of touched on it, but I wanted to hear everyone's thoughts.
I asked for, I say 3, 2, 1, 3 years of historical financials, go back 5. I mean, a lot of times, you want to see a business before COVID and after COVID. It's kind of the line in the sand. Get your current interims year to date and then prior year interims to match, so you can do a trailing 12-month calculation to see what the business done in revenue and income over the last 12 months. Business owners don't want to give up who their clients are and who their vendors are until they have an LOI, at least have some exclusivity. So don't ask that. Right up to that, they're not going to give you their AR sheet. They're not going to give you, sales by client. One of the things that we do try to accomplish is to give you an idea of what the industries the business is operating in, so you can see if there's a concentration by industry. I'm always worried about a concentration in clients, so I like to lay that out. Just put a code A through Z, and so they could, so a buyer can see, hey, there is no concentration. If I get to the next level, I'll get to reveal those names. Ask for financials, that's completely normal. Usually we have more information, and we'll kind of release it over time at certain benchmarks. But I like to put the buyer and the sellers in the room together and let them ask questions, because you're going to be working with that seller if you buy the company. If you're successful, or maybe not, right? You have them leave at close, but most of the time you're going to have somebody you're working with. So if you don't get to know them at all, or if they're overcoached, it doesn't work out. So I like to put the buyers and sellers in a room and ask questions and, try to begin a relationship right there.
Yeah, just really quickly, on that point, I'm buying a company right now, and I hope to close in January. I talk to the seller multiple times a day, like every day, and we've been doing that, building this strong relationship for months, and I think it's going to lead to a very successful transaction. Case in point, we had to negotiate a pretty tough issue last week, and I wanted to meet with him because it's typically, for me, easier to negotiate face-to-face than it is over the phone, and I typically get my way when we do that, and so it was just much easier in which to negotiate and talk through that issue because we already have a built-in relationship. But I would say the last thing in terms of diligence is pre-LOI. I always ask for a management summary, and it may not include names, but I'm looking for the length of time that the management team or the key management people or person has worked for the business, and then compensation as well, because I just want to wrap my head around that.
Yeah, interesting. Any other questions? We've got the key players. Yes, sir.
With spending a lot of time with the owner, is it important also to meet with the management team, because you may get a different, in my opinion, that they may be more honest than, I hate to say that an owner would be dishonest, but to get the real feel of the company?
Absolutely, if you have the opportunity in which to do so. Every transaction is going to be very unique in that you might have one seller that might be a lot more forthcoming with management introductions, but most of the times I've seen that it's almost impossible to even get the names of the management team or the key driver of the actual operations. But all times I ask for it. I want to see who's actually driving the operation. If it's not the manager himself or owner, herself. 100% of the times I always ask for it, but I'd say 99% of the times I'm not able to talk and meet with the actual management team, just for confidentiality purposes.
Any other questions for the guys up front? All right. Well, let me say thanks, everyone. You all brought a very different perspective. Obviously, we got the banking, we got the broking, we got the ETA entrepreneur, Denise, hopefully closing soon, and and all part of the sort of the ecosystem that hopefully we've given you some idea about. Well, what does it take to get this credibility? Well, how is that going to help you, get you over the line when you finally find the deal that you want to make? But I'm very grateful to everyone in the panel. I think we have some you can't get out of here without getting some Weatherhead gear, I'm sure, or something like that. But I mean, let's just, until I get you your tat, let me just give you a little round of applause. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Jeff, am I handing it back to you?
Thank you. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, panel. I'm just going to sneak by you all here. You can stay if you like. Here's what I'd love to do. In your workbooks, I was hoping my workbook stayed here. I'd love you to turn to page 32. Page 32 in your workbook. And I'm going to give you 30, 45, 60 seconds maybe. Mark, if you can cue up some journaling music in just a second. I'd love you to think about some of the biggest insights you took from the panel. Right? Amazing stories, in-depth analysis of what makes a credible buyer. Take 60, 90 seconds right now. Just jot down the following three things. And Sean set it up well because I think he used the term 3, 2, 1. 3 insights, 3 learnings that you took from the panel. 2 actions maybe that you're going to take away from this that you could implement. And then finally, 1 panel member you'd like to acknowledge. Okay, 3 insights, 2 actions, 1 panel member you'd like to acknowledge. Take 90 seconds right now, mark some journaling music, and then I'll give you instructions to what we're going to do. All right, thank you, Mark. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Just turn to your neighbors if you are kind of sitting apart. Turn to someone behind you. I just want you to share what you wrote down. Insights, actions, and something you want to acknowledge from something you heard on one of the panel members. Take 2 minutes right now. Share with your neighbors. Take your learning to a different level, and then we'll get some shares to the large room. Have fun. All right, if I can have your attention up here again, and if we can have some mic runners ready to go. Here's what I'd love to do. I'd love to just get a few people to share. It could be an insight, something really key you took from one of the panel members. Could be an action that you're going to take. Or it could be just someone you want to acknowledge or appreciate for the immense value they provided here today. Let's try to get at least 4 people acknowledging each of the panel members as we go through that. Who wants to go first? Anyone want to go first? I'm not going to let you off the hook. I could go first, but I'm going to wait. Love to hear from 4 people. Someone you want to acknowledge or appreciate. Thank you over there.
I would like to acknowledge Larry Fulton. His background is very, very similar to mine. I mean, I started at Society Bank, worked in industry, and then I got fired, and it was the best thing ever because it forced me to buy a company and own my own company. So
awesome. Thank you. Let's hear it for this individual and Larry up here. 2, 3 more people. Who else wants to share? Something you want to acknowledge or appreciate back there? Yeah.
Sean, it was just nice to hear from that perspective. You know, not too often you're looking from the seller's perspective and how to work with them. It's more kind of just going in and saying, hey, I got to buy. So getting his feedback was great.
Awesome. Round of applause for him and Sean. A couple more shares, right up here. Here, I got a mic. Hand up.
I just want to say I appreciate Smiley Kylie. She had great insights from what it ought to look like to be bankable. I've helped quite a few clients where they have great opportunities and their bank situation is not great. And I was able to get some good insights. I don't know where she is right now. I'd be looking at her. But thank you very much, Kylie. You offered great insights specifically on what to do to get bankable.
Love it. Awesome. Round of applause. Thank you. One more. Who wants to acknowledge or appreciate sunshine? Back here.
Yes, I want to acknowledge Sunshine Denise. It was great hearing where Denise is at. I know we talked really early in your journey, and I think just what you've done to prepare yourself and just sharing what it looks like so you become really credible and how you've built such a strong team behind you and the value of that is really inspirational. So thank you.
Awesome. Round of applause. Thank you. All right, now I'll wrap this out. Big round of applause if you thought Simon did an amazing job again. Thank you, Simon. All right, we are going to take a break now for 15 minutes. We'll be back in here at 2:30. I think there's some refreshments and things out there, bathroom break. We'll see you all back here in 15 minutes after the break. Really exciting pitch competition.